Yo, Hideyuki here. The repelling rose, the messenger of facts, the one born to be berserk, returning with an origin video. Today, I wanted to share a story with y'all as to how I became the rebelling rose of wisdom. And what does a rebelling rose actually mean? What do I mean when I say that? Because you probably have noticed already, man, Yuki, you say that in damn near every video. Where's that coming from, man? And I've also noticed you be talking about petals of wisdom. So what is that, man? What is that? And listen, my young seeds. You see, long ago, right, I was a young seed myself. Trying to find my place in the world, trying to find my true identity. I wanted to grow, I wanted to bloom, just like any other great flower would do. But I didn't just want to be any flower, I wanted to be a rose, something that's beautiful, but something that also has a rebellious side to it, that has a certain rage to it. I wanted to have that, but still retain me. And so I went on that journey. And by that journey, I mean by media. Different types of media. I dibbled and dabbled into manga. That's the very first one. I'm a very, very big fan of manga. I've always had been. I grew and grew that collection, collecting single volumes of manga that I love, completing series that I love, collecting extra print materials, whether that's guidebooks, magazines, Japanese volumes for series that doesn't have an English print, everything of that sort. And it just kept growing and growing. But I've also had a passion for other type of media. I had the passion for comics, for anime, for tokusatsu, for visual kei, for metal music, and I just dibble and dabbled into everything. And my collection grew and grew and grew. And not just the collection, it's not just about collecting what you love, it's about being honest with what you love and really putting that work, really putting that passion into that. And that's exactly what I did over a long period of time. It took me a long time to get to where I am today. I started to realize what was on higher quality from what was trash. And there's nothing wrong with liking trash. If you like trash, that's that's your business. But for me, I wanted to be on that higher level. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, I noticed that this isn't as good as the next thing. I'm like, oh, this is kind of the same thing, but it's even better. It's written with much more haste, conflict, and has a much stronger resonance with its readers, has a much stronger resonance with its players, right? With its watchers, whatever it may be. And gaming is another thing that I also dibbled and dabbled a lot into. I used to be someone that would only play certain type of games for a long, long time. But once I saw and it really got exposed to gaming that I should have been on, I was like, wow, this is incredible. Oh, I'm never looking back. I'm on those games, man, all the time. Especially JRPGs. I mean, JRPGs is probably one of the greatest styles of game of all time. And that's not to say that there's no other great games. Of course not. There's great racing games, there's great hack and slash games, there's great fighting games. There's all sorts of great type of games out there. Right? And that's how I grew into the rebelling roads that you see today. That's how I've become so confident with what I say. That's why I have such a rebellious attitude, a give no fucks attitude, you know, all the time. I kind of have that heavy metal mindset all the time, that punk rock mindset all the time of, yeah, I don't give a fuck and I'm just going to go in. But at the same time, there's a beauty to it. There's an art to it. It's a lot harder than what it seems. It definitely is. But I'm also proud of what I've become. And that's something that I'm always going to be grateful for it. And that's something that y'all can also learn from. You know, make sure to be yourselves. And what I mean by that is not to just expose whatever you like all the time, but just being honest with what you like. You know, just being completely 100%. If you know that it's not good, it's not good, but you like it, okay, that's fine. If you know something is of quality and you fight for that, no matter what other people might say, then I'll have a respect for that too. I'll have no problem with that. But yes, being the rebelling rose is it's quite something. You know, it's quite something. It's something I've built up over time, and I always try to share petals of wisdom. You know, another term may be fact spitting. You know, and for some people they think, oh, it's rage bait. Oh, he's just hating. Oh, he doesn't like anything. He can't like anything. But what you're gonna start realizing is it's impossible for a person to hate everything. You know, that is just really impossible. You know, the stuff that I call out is not necessarily hate. You may see it that way. You may not understand what it is beyond, you know, what you're thinking. That's why you're still on that surface level. That's why you can't see the layers. You know, you can't see the layers of the rose. You know, you're looking at only one petal at the top. You're not, you know, looking underneath, trying to get to the bud. You know, you're not looking all the way down to the seed, to the foundation. Right? But I always try to sprinkle in wisdom uh, with my videos, you know, with my beliefs. You know, I don't just rant on stuff to rant on stuff. I always think about the bigger picture. I always think about the future. You know, I always think about the repercussions. I always think about, you know, the effects, you know, the influence. What is this going to do to people? You know, how is this going to, you know, change their perspective? How is this going to mold their mindset? You know, that's what I think about when it comes to media. That's why I take it much more seriously, especially in the internet day and age, especially in a day and age where media is everything, you know, at least to some people. So with that in mind, I always stay on my game. And with that being said, I want all of you to do well. Prosper, my seeds. Prosper. Thrive, grow, experience. That's what it means to be in a rebelling rose.